You're listening to the Patriot Nation Podcast.
All right, welcome to a special edition of the Patriot Nation Podcast. Today, I am joined by one of the biggest guests we've ever had, to be completely honest with you. He is the director of the new Dynasty documentary on Apple Plus, is Matthew Hamachek. Matthew, thank you so much for coming through. We really appreciate it. And, super excited to talk to you about this.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
So, and I mentioned this to you off air, and for anyone that, obviously that it hasn't come out yet, it's coming out on February 16th on Apple Plus. If you don't have Apple Plus, go out and get Apple Plus. The first 3 minutes, the cold open to the whole thing, I was like, it had tears in my eyes. I was like, this is too much. It could have been just that. It would have been enough. It was incredible. So be prepared to be all in your feels if you're a Patriots fan here. So, but let's dive right into it. And I guess I want to start with a little bit of backstory with you, because I know that you worked with Jeff on Tiger, and I'm just curious, how this compared to the making of that documentary, which obviously was a great documentary as well.
Yeah, so let me talk a bit about Jeff first, and then I'll answer the question. So Jeff Benedict wrote the book Tiger, which was the inspiration of that series, and at the end of it said, "Hey, I'm writing this thing about the Patriots," and said, "Do you want to come on?" And I said, "Of course." And so that was sort of the genesis of my involvement in the project. But the answer is, honestly, they're not that different. In some ways, Tiger, I didn't have Tiger. I didn't have any of the people in his inner circle. I didn't have the access to all the people that were immediately involved. But the process is very similar in both ways. You have to earn the trust of the people that you're hoping will help you tell the story. And in this case, for the Dynasty, it was the 60 or 70, players, coaches, executives, obviously, including Brady, Belichick, and Kraft, but just so many different people that came through the team, but also the rivals and people that really weren't involved in football who have a reason to be in here. And I didn't know a lot about the Patriots at all. I had my own team, but what that did is that it really afforded me the ability to listen and not come in with some preconceived notion about like, hey, this is the story that I grew up watching or I know so well. It was, I want to listen to what the people who were actually inside these rooms making the decisions that led to great success, and then also the people that were there that witnessed the thing unraveling as a whole. And so it was a process of listening. But then also the remarkable thing that we had an opportunity to do here was we had access to about 35,000 or so, I don't even know what the figure was, hours of archive, a lot of which has never been seen before. And, you can only imagine the process of bringing in a huge team of people just to look through that stuff and say, oh my gosh, where are the gems in all of these? And how does that sort of elucidate the things that we're hearing in the interview chair? And I think the result is something incredibly special that the most diehard Patriot fan will find something that they've never seen before.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I love the way that so much of that footage that we haven't seen before was in there, which was great. And look, everyone loved The Last Dance when it came out, and it was a great documentary, of course. But I like the fact that this wasn't like The Last Dance. The Last Dance talked about the Bulls, but it was about Michael Jordan, right? This is not a Tom Brady documentary. This is not a Bill Belichick documentary. It's not even a Robert Kraft documentary. This is a Patriots documentary. And I think that, and I'm sure you can speak to it, but it feels obvious that was your real strong intention going into it.
That you couldn't be more correct. Bill had a book written about on the education of a coach, right? And several others. Tom had his own docu-series, right? But those were very specific lenses through which to look at this story. when you start to get to know anything about this team, you realize that it is a team, and to quote Bill Belichick, TEAM, team. In order to tell the story the right way, you have to bring everybody together and really let them tell the story, right? This isn't an article that's written with off the record sources. This isn't one specific lens. This is all of them on the record, many of them for the first time in a lot of ways, and many people who you really haven't heard all that much from, like Ernie Adams, the director of football research, right? Who's sort of a person that I don't think people have really been able to hear all that much from before. But Ernie gave me, 15 plus hours of interviews for the project. Scott Pioli, similarly, even Robert Kraft gave me, 10 plus hours of interviews for this thing. So it was really from all perspectives. And I think that's what makes this story so unique.
Yeah, I agree. And so Robert Kraft, I mean, let's just talk about him for a second. Were you a little surprised? Because I have to be honest with you, I was a little surprised just how candid he was talking about some of the things that went on inside the building, outside of the building that involved the organization. I was surprised at how candid he really was.
Absolutely. In a lot of ways that applied to everybody we talked to, right? Because from the outside looking in, again, I had my own team. I didn't know much about the Patriots, but the one thing I did know is that they always sort of, the team as a whole, as an organization, as players, they were always sort of at arm's length, right? The person you saw the most from was Belichick, and he was always the we're on to Cincinnati guy, the non-answer guy. And then I had the opportunity to get all these people together, Robert Kraft included, and they were all incredibly charismatic, all very revealing, and were very, very candid. And I was surprised by that. And I think that, look, documentaries are made by the people who are willing to sit down in the chair and tell their stories. And I think I got very, very, very lucky to be able to have all these people. And I think for whatever reason, it all seemed like it was time for them to finally share stuff.
Yeah. What was the most difficult thing to leave out? Because I mean, look, there's 20 some odd years of stuff, and even going back to like you guys go back all the way to 93, and even before that, when you go back to Cleveland, what was the most difficult thing to leave out? I know as Patriots fans, something that I was looking for that I didn't get was Tedy Bruschi's stroke after the 2004 Super Bowl, but you just can't tell that many stories. There's too much stuff going on. And so what, for you personally, what was like the number one thing that you're like, I wish we could have snuck that in there, just wasn't enough time?
So the answer is there really wasn't anything that I didn't get to get in, but let me sort of tell you how I got there, right? There's many ways to tell a story. And obviously, I spend the first 3 episodes really telling the story of the Patriots going from almost the bad news bears of the NFL to Super Bowl champion and then winning 3 and 4 years, right? If I had been telling it in sort of and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, we would have gotten to the first Super Bowl at 36, and then the next story would have been about how the 2002 season they didn't even make the playoffs, and then you would have gotten, and then the next year would have been about how they let Lawyer Malloy go, and Rodney Harrison was brought in, and then you get into all of that drama, and you'd get into it. And the problem with that is that if you focus on and then this happened, and this happened, and this happened, then you're not really telling a story with a perspective. You're just sort of presenting a historical document and sort of just saying this is what took place. And you'd be detailing all the AFC Championship games against the Colts and all of the things that I know as somebody who's spent 2.5 years diving into this thing are endlessly fascinating. But I really wanted to make sure, and Jeff, myself, and our team with Apple TV Plus, Imagine Docs, we really wanted to focus on telling a story through the eyes of the people who were there, and how something's created, how it's sustained, and then how it eventually falls apart. And you get to this point where you realize this is really a human story. It's not necessarily about football. And if you come to that conclusion and you sort of have this understanding of the story that these people have told you and the story you want to tell, then it sort of frees you up to leave some of the details on the cutting room floor, because that's not what it's really all about. It's not about the footballs. It's and it's not about every single game. It's about this overarching 20-year story. So that's the long-winded answer to there isn't a single thing on the cutting room floor that I wish I could have gotten in.
Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks. For me, it's got to be the buffalo chicken dip. That's my #1 with the Fritos. Come on now. And placing some super bets as well. My #1 bet of the weekend, offensive lineman to score a touchdown, because that's just hilarious. That would be incredible. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W, or 2, or 3. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which player will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers, join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
One thing I'll tell you, and this isn't really even a question, but one thing I'll tell you is that I think you have done something right, because you're going to find that Patriots fans are going to be pissed at you at the way that you portrayed Spygate and Deflategate, and non-Patriots fans are going to be pissed at you about the way you portrayed Spygate and Deflategate, because you delved into it and you focused on it and you talked about it, but you didn't make the case one way or the other. It just, here are the facts, this is what happened, and so on and so forth. And, people were able to give their own judgments the way they did. And I think that to me is a mark of of a good documentary, because you're not skewed one way or the other. You're just saying, hey, this is what happened, and this is how it went. So I was impressed by that.
Well, look, this is not sports talk radio. This is not the hot take, thing that we're all used to seeing on TV. That's the beauty of getting to make a 10-part series, right? It's not like this binary thing of right or wrong or good or evil or anything like that. These are human beings going through incredibly complicated situations on the biggest stage imaginable. And you get to witness them going through it. But I'm not here to pass judgment on anybody. Sometimes you watch these, whether it's other documentaries or just anything on TV or media or whatever, and they sort of set up a straw man just to be able to knock them down, and they let the people say the dumbest thing that they possibly can, and there's villain and then there's good people. That's not the stories that I'm interested in telling. Everybody's complicated. Everybody has their reasons, and I hope you're right. I hope that people really do appreciate that. I'm sure it'll be frustrating, because there aren't easy villains. There aren't easy good guys in any of this. It's people going through really tricky situations.
Yeah. All right. Two more questions for you.
Sure.
One of them, and I mentioned it to you before, but I noticed at least a lack of current staff members, coaching staff members. And I think that there are some people on the staff that would have benefited from that. Was that something that you didn't have access to, or was that something that that you just you went a different way with it?
No, I mean, look, we weren't covering the 2023 season, the 2022 season really at all. This was really the 20 years, I guess in a way when Tom was there. It was the story that we were telling, and we had Ernie Adams, we had Bill Belichick. If you got Bill, and you've got basically his right-hand guy, and you've got all the players that were there throughout these times. You got captains, you got McCourty, you got Slater, you got Tom. It didn't feel like we were lacking another voice or a perspective. And I think that when the people are as candid as they are, especially in those later years, it just didn't feel like we were missing something. So I think that we captured the sentiment of the coaching staff and of the players, and especially the ones who were basically, like I said, the captains of the team. So I hear what you're saying. We didn't have the people that were there this past year, but that also really wasn't the story that we were telling.
Right. Well, I was thinking more like Troy Brown, who was there at the beginning, and Bill O'Brien, who was an offensive coordinator back, during that dynasty time. Right. And so those are kind of the people, and even, Gerard Mayo, who was drafted in 2008 and was the de facto defensive coordinator. Those are the people I was thinking about. But I agree with you. I don't think there was anything missing, by not having those guys. I was like, I didn't know if that was something where, Bill was like, hey, look, you can interview me, but nobody else. And so that's what I was.
There were no restrictions on stories we could tell or people we could interview or anything like that. This was, for better or for worse, there's a story we wanted to tell on the people that we wanted to interview. So
I will.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I will tell you there are, and I'm not going to give anything away, but I will tell you right now, there are some people that you have on that took my breath away. I was like, he got him? He's on here? So there's a few of them that I was like, whoa, okay, this is great. Like, so yes, I agree with you that there was no one missing. That's for sure. So, and then last question for you, and this is a little bit of a tough question, but I'm going to ask it anyways. And this is kind of as you said, there's no true villains in the story. And, I brought up The Last Dance, and of course, Jerry Krause was kind of the villain of that story. Mm-hmm. And it felt to me, and I don't know if you got this feeling or if, is Bill Belichick kind of the villain of this story?
It's interesting. I don't personally see it that way, because I go back to this story, that Tedy Bruschi tells, right, about in episode 5, he talks about how he's the wet towel and Bill Belichick's hands are the hands that are wringing the talent out of him, right? These players talk about it's not easy to be coached by Bill, right? But he brings the absolute best out of him. And so, yes, as we get into the complicated things like Alex Guerrero being removed from the sidelines and the tension that creates and things like that, I wanted to make sure that we presented Bill's version of why that had to happen just as much as I wanted to present Tom's feeling about how that happened. And I think, look, this is complicated stuff. This is nuanced. This is not easy, right? I really don't think that there are good guys and villains in this story at all. I can understand everybody's perspective here. And it was really important for me to not have there be any villains or any heroes. And I'll be interested to see how everybody else feels, but I understand a lot of what Bill did. And I think there is no doubt in my mind that Bill Belichick contributed so much to this story, and that none of these people, whether it's Bill, Tom, or Robert, or any of the other people that were involved, would have ever been able to accomplish what they did without each other. And I think that's what makes this story so remarkable, right? You have these stories where it's like, I'm using your words here, but it sort of felt like the Jordan story it was kind of about the Bulls, but it was really about Michael Jordan. This is the ultimate team story, right? And yes, of course, it inevitably came to an end, and that's fascinating. And we can't talk about it right now, but that has gone into with great detail, as you know, because you've seen it. But I think what's as remarkable as anything else is the fact that they were able to sustain it for as long as they did, right? This is 20 years. Think about any relationship for 20 years. There's going to be complications, and we get into all of it. But the fact that they kept it going, and the fact that they got those last few Super Bowls out of it is just incredible to me. It's a great sports story, but it's a great human story.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'll tell you the depth that you guys went into, and I learned some things that I didn't know as a season ticket holder since 2000 and a Patriots fan my whole life, that, some of the Cleveland stuff that you go into great detail about and how it relates back to the Patriots stuff, I thought was fascinating. And there was a lot of kind of tidbits in there that I was like, oh, I didn't realize that, or I wouldn't, put those two things together. And so I was very impressed by the way it was done. And honestly, Patriots fans out there, listen, let me tell you something. I haven't watched anything about 2007 since it happened. It's the worst loss in the history of sports. And I thought you did a great job of doing that. It was so hard to watch and painful. But that's what it was supposed to be like, is the devastation. You could feel the devastation through the people that were retelling the story. And I thought it was incredibly well done. And so I was impressed. I walked away impressed. There's some really great tidbits and some great stories from Scott Pioli, from his time in Atlanta, from his time in New England. And so there's a lot of great stuff. So what I'm saying to everyone is that if you don't have Apple Plus, for the love of God, go out and get this. If you're a Patriots fan, you have to sit down and watch this. I told Matthew before, I binge watched it literally last night. I was like, I can't go to bed. I have to finish this. It was incredible. So go out and get it and watch this. It was very well worth it. Matthew, it was fantastic. And thank you so much for your time here.
No, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And so February 16th on Apple Plus, and I believe it's the first 3 episodes on the 16th, correct?
It will on February 16th. I think we got the first 2, and then it's 2 a week after that, I believe, on Apple TV Plus.
Okay, there you go, 10-part. Well, thank you so much, Matthew. Have a great night, and thanks again, and good luck in all your future endeavors. I can't wait to watch the next great documentary that you make.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.